Good morning. It's Laura from McNeely Garden Studios, Tuesday at 10. Today I thought that I would show you, I've had several people ask me some different questions about getting their blending technique to look smooth. And of course, like everything, it's a lot of practice, but if you know that foundation, then you can have a lot more success, right? So this past week, I did a piece and it's called True North. And I noticed that it had a lot of the elements in it that that you were asking about, some of the blending elements. And I'm going to show you that piece. It's an original piece that I did for my membership, Art and Answers. And good morning, Lori. And so this is called True North. And this membership not only teaches art techniques, but it also has personal enrichment advice for midlife ladies. So this particular one was about fresh perspective, which sort of naturally goes with January because everyone does their resolutions, and it came to my attention that resolutions tend to fall off around January 9. So that means that you're not being very realistic when you're coming up with some of these ideas. But some of the things we talk about in Art and Answers are simple ways, step by step, tiny little chunks to eat of ways to get where you want to go. But it's not so massive that you want to quit almost immediately. But that's irrelevant. Today we're going to be talking about these blending techniques. And so you can see that here is one where I created some contrast between the yellow and the orange, and I'm going to show you that. That's watercolor with a wet on wet technique. Then you can look over here in these clouds. I can't see. And that is a little bit different. That is going to be with watercolor pencils and water. And then something totally different that is not on here that I felt like would round out the lesson. So we're going to put that aside. We'll revisit that later. So my table's full of stuff to show you today. I'm going to turn you down here and you can have a look-see, okay? So I do have kind of a myriad of, I'm not going to do a particular project today, but I wanted to show you some different things. So this is just a mixed media pad. It's not watercolor paper. It's 120 pound, which is kind of heavy, but it's a light grain, but it's really good for if I was going to do mixed media and I wanted to put something, paint something on here and cut it out and use it in something. I certainly could do that. But I'm going to use it to show you the third technique that we haven't talked about from True North, and that is acrylic paint. So this is just, I think I need to move you over here a little. So to get a nice blend, there are several ways to do it, but you kind of want to do it with a wet idea. So I'm just going to put a little bit of paint out there, and I would advise you can blend any colors, but if you're not careful, you can get colors that will blend together and turn out kind of muddy. So if you have a red and a green or something like that, just be careful with your blending. You cannot over blend colors like that and have them not turn brown. But sometimes you can blend them gently and they will turn out kind of interesting. So I'm going to wet my brush. I do have dedicated brushes for my acrylic, which do tend to be these wooden ones. And you'll notice that these kind of metallic green ones over time I use for my watercolor. And that's because acrylic paint is a plastic, and it does tend to be a lot more gritty or fibrous, and it tends to break down the bristles of your brush a little bit faster. If you don't have two sets of brushes, that's fine. It will just be something that you will look forward to someday in the future. So I'm going to tip the corner of this brush in one color of the paint. This is almost like a toll painting technique. And then I'm gonna just dip the other corner of my brush in there. And you will see, as we begin to pull this down, you end up with two lines. You don't want to flip your brush because now you've got pink on the yellow and yellow on pink. So you just want to keep going back and forth with the same two bristles. And you can add to it. You can kind of move around to the side a bit. There we go. So that you end up with a beautiful blend of those two colors. So you've got the yellow on one side and pink on the other side, but it's beautifully blended. And just tell me in the comments all the different things that you can think of that you could use this particular technique. These colors especially, I can see in a sunrise or a sunset. That would be perfect. Now you can also put this dollop of color pretty much just next to each other. And you can do it this way. You're gonna get a lot more blending, and it's not gonna stay quite as pure as this did, but you can, it's a little freer, a little more fun. You can go back and add a little bit and give it a little bit. You can also add just a tiny bit of water if you end up with too much of a dry brush look into it. Just be careful with the water because it depends on what kind of surface you're using, how much moisture it can take. Now, if you notice, I've blended it back and forth so much that this actually became a peach color. It's not the pink or the yellow. It has become its own color, which is what I was talking about with the red and green. If you had continued to blend those, it would be brown. But in this case, it's beautiful, right? Beautiful. All right. So this is acrylic. And I'm gonna write that on there for you. All right, now this other one, I'm going to use a scratch page of watercolor paper, actual watercolor paper, because it's going to accept the water a little bit differently. So what we're going to do, like we did with this True North design, is go right here. And I'm going to show you the two techniques separately and combined. So we're going to do this yellow, excuse me, and I'm going to do wet on wet technique. So I've got a large brush that I'm just going to put right into the paper. And we've discussed this before, how much water? That's always the question. You don't want it just soaking wet, because if you do, you'll have the pigment of the watercolor kind of pool, and it will give you something called a bloom. And sometimes you want that. Sometimes you can use that to your advantage. But a lot of times it looks messy and looks like inexperience. So, so you just have to be careful where you use these things. I do have my watercolor set. This one was just a little smaller because I had so much stuff on my table. And I have spritzed it with some color, with some water. The reason we do that, it only takes about 30 seconds, but it activates the color, and it gives you, if I was to go ahead and dip into this right now, it would be a lot lighter color. See, I save all these little pieces. It'd be a lot less pigment. Very light like that. Whereas if you work it in, give it some time, and let it become kind of creamy almost. Like, I would say sour cream texture. Maybe even mayonnaise. But I know mayonnaise grosses a lot of people out. But I would say sour cream. Where you just kind of blend it in there, let it become juicy, creamy, and you're going to end up with a much more saturated color that you can do different things with. That's amazing. That's the difference between water for a second and water to let it blend. Now you can also then take it and you can make this blend with just a little extra water. So actually, that's a fourth technique I hadn't even decided to tell you, but here it is. So see how it's blending into a different color there, into a different hue, different shade, okay? So, but what we're gonna do with this wet on wet technique, and I've let it get just a tiny bit too dry, so I'm gonna let it go again. You want it to look shiny, but not saturated. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna start with this yellow. Let me check in here. Oh, good morning, Jamie, Donna, hello, Laurie. And so I'm gonna start, I was not looking what I was doing and I went right in that green. Did you see that? No problem. You just wet it and wipe it off. That's how easy it is to fix it with watercolor. So I'm gonna dip right in this yellow. I'm gonna get it to that creamy consistency, and I'm gonna give it a go. Okay. Then to get this to blend, I'm gonna use, I was gonna use that red, but I think I'm gonna come back over here to this orange. I've gotten a little dry, but you see how you can literally get so much paint on your brush. And we're just gonna let that blend into this wet. And you'll get this mixy, beautiful look that has a soft transition. Anytime you feel like you have a little too much pigment, you can always pull it off with a drier brush. So see, there is the blend with that, with the watercolor. So this is wet on wet. watercolor paint. Okay. Just for fun, let's put this on here so we can have some comparison. I'll go back to my acrylic brush. There we go. And we're going to put this on here. With acrylic. And now these are watercolor pencils. And I've kept this little piece of packaging in there just so I can remember. They do look a little different than regular pencils. These ones are indicated that way because of the color on the end, and I do like that. So we're going to stay with our pink and yellow. Keep that up too. And so we're going to just color this in, and it's going to have the texture of the paper on there for just a minute. See the texture of the paper? It looks kind of dry. And then I'm just going to take a plain wet brush and we're going to blend those. Doesn't take a lot. It starts to pick up the pigment. There we go. And you just work with it until you get the blendiness that you want. Now, what if I wanted to get a little bit more of a contrast like I did here with this sun? These clouds are this pencil. So I went around and round, and then I did around and round with the water on the brush. But what if I wanted to, I'm going to do this with this acrylic first and show you, because I want it to dry a little bit. Anything like this, you don't want to put your pencils or your pens in anything wet. It will ruin it. So this is acrylic, and we're going to let that, as that dries, I'm going to tell you what we did in my membership Art and Answers with this design, True North. We talked about two aspects of a book that I read, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if you haven't read that book, it's really, I advise you read it. It's just an amazing, a lot of things over time don't wear the test of time. They change, and people change philosophies, and they follow this, this way of thinking, they follow that way of thinking. But this is so basic that it has just, it goes down to the core of human nature, and it's just not going to change. It's just the way it is. But he has two particular philosophies that one of them is to be proactive. you're in charge of your response and not your circumstances. So that's one of those things you have to get involved in. And the other is his fifth habit, is seek first to understand and then try to make yourself be understood. And so this is what we talk about in Art and Answers. As we're doing these beautiful designs, we talk about these philosophies. And to get really in depth, you'll have to just be involved in that. But knowing that you have an opportunity to behave the way you're not a victim of your circumstance. You have a way, you have an opportunity to do what you need to do, and to first be heard, to first understand before you try to make yourself heard. And of course, that's a Buddhist thing, you know. Make sure that you listen more than you speak. So we're going to get back to our blending. Here is acrylic over here, and here is our pencil, which of course you just have a lot more control over. We've been using pencils and pens since kindergarten, right? And so here you can just blend with the water, and you can get it as much or as little as you like. And what's nice about these pencils is they get a little bit more intense. They do dry a little later, but they get really intense here. There we go. So this is acrylic and watercolor pencil. How about that? And today is January, 20. I'm gonna put that on here too. How about that? So here we go. Tell me in the comments which one is your favorite. Which one do you like? I'm gonna turn you up here because I can see your comments a little bit better. Hello. So they're all similar. You see that right there? That's where I put my hand in the paint. Don't do that. But they're all similar, but blended a little differently. And so I would urge you to do this for yourself, perhaps in one of your practice books, sketchbook. If you're not working in a sketchbook for practice, I urge you to do that. And give yourself some notes, you know, figure out exactly how you did it. Make yourself some notes of what products you used, what kind of brushes you used, how much water you used. I mean, there's a lot of different variables, and make it scientific. Make it a way that you can refer to it and be inspired by it. Even color combinations. You can go right down the page go from warm to cold colors if that's what you want. But this is a really good practice to get better with your products, your techniques, and just give your mind a little break from the big world out there that can be scary. So, and if you are interested in binge watching some of these ideas that I have, you can visit me on YouTube. I've created a playlist, and I'm just in the beginning of getting some of those things organized. I've been working on it since November, but it's beginning to come together. So you can look at some of these things and really give yourself an advantage, okay? Donna says they're cool. Yes. And the word of the week is blend. How about that? I agree. You got good ideas, Donna. All right. So get out there, get to blending, get to practicing, and get get to creating and enjoying your life. Thanks so much for always coming to see me and support me. I love seeing you and talking with you, and I will see you soon. Okay? Bye.